learning that sometimes being consistent in the way that we show up and function can actually be what's holding us back. Hi there, my name is Julia and welcome to the Self-Development Collective. Here we explore personal development in a way that honors all parts of ourselves, including the tricky parts. I share genuine stories and reflections mixed with ideas from psychotherapy and self-development to help us figure out how to live more authentically and build deeper connections with ourselves and others. I am so excited to have you here. Hey guys, and welcome to this vlog. In this vlog, we're going to be talking about being scared to change. So I don't know about you, but I feel like often I get these sort of feelings, these sort of insights, these answers, these inklings, these itches to do something differently. And this is something that I felt like recently, especially with my work, with my content. I really felt like doing more of like slightly a bit more vlogging style, different types of scenes and recording, which is way outside of my depth. You know me, I'm a podcast girl. I like to be recording with my mic set up in the same setup, organized note. It's just a complete opposite to who I am. And so something that I've really been thinking about lately is feeling that call to change and being too scared to change. Knowing that you want to do things differently, but then knowing that consistency is what counts. And I don't know about you, but I get really confused with when does consistency of something like doing the same thing the same way become a barrier to who we want to be rather than helping us to get there. And that's the thing I feel like I hear so much online. Like, honestly, I've had to cut a bit of my online time because I feel like I get so caught up in that space of like consistency, hustle, do this, do that, like do it this way, don't do it that way. For example, it was like vlogging's really hard, like in the sense, give people what they like. There's just so much out there. I can't even answer that. I can't even give you like a proper answer. I just feel like, when you get overwhelmed with online information, that you want to do something, but maybe it's like not the way that everyone suggests to go about it. Or maybe it's like something in your personal life. And I feel like this is something that I'm learning in every area of my life right now, not just one. I feel like I am trying to learn when it's time to stop being consistent in the way that I'm showing up and when it's time to change that. So whether that's in a relationship, whether that's in my work, for example, I feel like for a long time I've held this identity of really showing up, being consistent with the people that I love, really showing up, being whatever they need, whenever they need me, and recognizing how that and playing that role can hold me back in my own life, can hold me back from relationships that are no longer serving me ending, from me spending my time the way I need to for me as well, because, to be that person for someone means you have to show up so much. And I don't know, I'm really learning about at the moment. I'm learning like, when does consistency impact on our growth? When does consistency become the protector or the part of us that stops us from changing? And this is something that I've realized with my work as well. I know there's a lot out there about always showing up and being consistent, but is consistency the same as changing how we show up? So can we be consistent in the growth? Can we be consistent in going towards becoming that person while changing the things that we do? And this is literally the biggest thing I've been thinking about and really practicing with my work at the moment, trying to show up less scripted, less with answers, more with questions, which scares me because I also have always felt like I need to be an answers person. I didn't feel like I needed to let people into that part of my journey where I'm questioning things because who would want to know? But then I was speaking to my friend recently and I was like, I shared this like video on TikTok and I'm trying to put myself out there in more a vulnerable way. And I said to her, it was so weird. I was talking about grief and I was like, who would want to hear those stories? And it's funny, you think like questioning that while doing this work. And she was like, well, I think it connects people. People don't want answers. They want stories. They want to feel like relatable. Yeah, I think that's something I'm learning is how to still be consistent in showing up, but knowing that the way I show up can be different. And that doesn't mean that I'm not being consistent. For example, with the podcast, right? I've worked and done it a certain way for a really long time. And I felt like if I stopped doing that, then I was giving up because the whole idea is keep going, keep going. But I suppose I was really recognizing too that I wasn't seeing the outcome or the results that I was hoping for, in the sense it hasn't really grown. I don't feel like I've grown. I don't feel like I've challenged myself. It's easy, like, a couple of years ago when I started YouTube, sitting here in front of this camera it was so intimidating. It was so intimidating. I was so scared. And now it's like talking to you is like talking to you. It's not a thing anymore. But then I realized that it's easy for me to turn on the camera, to be here to talk to you, that is no longer a challenge. What's challenging for me is to not come into this room and talk to you without answers, without giving you some form of like, this is what you should do. But it's tricky because I'm learning in this season of my life, at least, that we all have our own answers to things. And I think the challenge isn't that we don't always have the answers. I think the challenge is that we are so wired and so used to looking outside for those answers. And so I wanted to share with you a question that has been on my mind that I used while I was journaling this week. And I found it really helpful. So the question I asked myself is, if the outside world was matching what I was thinking or feeling inside, what would I be doing? So for example, with my YouTube, I know that I need to change things up. I know that I'm not getting the results that I want. But I suppose the thing was, I was looking at it from a perspective of an outside view. I was listening to what everyone else thought I should be doing. I was listening to what people said you needed to do. And I'm one of those people that I try to follow that. I really hone in on it. And then I forget the fact that I'm not doing things the way that I want to do, the way that I feel like I'm being called to or feel like it's right for me right now. And so that's why I thought this question was really helpful. I thought it gave me an understanding of where I was not aligned, where I was doing things that I thought I had to do or should be doing versus things that I wanted to try. And I always love that quote, like I have it on my wall, literally, Carl Jung. And I'm going to read it literally from the wall. He says, "We want to have certainties and no doubts, results and no experiments." And this is another thing I'm learning as well when it comes to this. So when we're looking at results, right, when we're trying to achieve something, I feel like we tend to look at the people that have already achieved it and go that way about it because we feel like that's what's going to get us those results. And so I felt like I've done that. I've shown up in the way that I felt like I needed to, looked like the way I needed to, did what other podcasts did and haven't seen the results. And granted, it's only been a year, so I know that it takes longer than that. But also what happens is, like, when you start to feel like it's no longer you, when you start to feel like you're doing something because you feel like that's the way it should be done versus the way you want to do it. And I always think of that idea of results, but no experiments. And so literally this vlog is about experimenting. And that's what I've been doing with my work, with my content, with how I show up. I'm really trying to experiment with who I am, what I'm doing, how I show up. And you'll see in this vlog, like there's B-roll, you'll see different sides of me, places I've been, different angles, and it's the tiniest thing. But for me, it's a big step. And for me, it's me experimenting. So this is my question to you. And this is the one question that I feel like has been really helpful when it comes to wanting to make a change, being scared to make a change, knowing that there's something that calls you, but you're like, I don't think it should be done this way. It's usually done that way. When you feel like you're listening to the external more than the internal. And so that question is, if the outside world was saying what your internal world is, what would you be doing differently? And whether that's relationships, whatever it looks like. But I know for me at the moment, career and also relationships, right? Learning that sometimes being consistent in the way that we show up and function can actually be what's holding us back. So down below in the comments, leave the answer to that question. What do you think is something that you feel like you're like, it's a should right now, I should be doing it this way, or what's something that you want to experiment more with? I'd love to know. Thanks for catching me in this vlog, and I will catch you in the next one.